What is going on, all you wonderful A-plusers out there? It is I, Stuart, here once again to give you guys another Superman and Lois review. This time, of course, we're going to be talking about episode number 8. Such a fantastic episode. A lot happened, so there's a lot to break down in this episode. A lot of theories that I have also as to what we might be able to see either this season or possibly the next season. And even some of my previous predictions are now kind of coming true in this episode. And I'll definitely get into that when I talk about especially the very end of the episode. But before I even get started and breaking down anything, one thing I really got to give this episode credit for is just the actress that plays Lois Lane in this episode had a phenomenal performance. And, you know, I know this is a superhero show on the CW, which means a lot of probably TV critics are probably not even really going to give the show that much of a watch. They'll probably watch the pilot, but that'll probably be about it. And, you know, even then, their thoughts are probably going to be something along the lines of, oh yeah, this was a really good pilot, but it's a CW show, so there's no real need to watch anything else because it's always just going to go downhill from the first episode. That would be my assumption of what their mindset is going to be. So it's sad because I don't think this episode is going to be on anyone's radar, which is too bad because I believe the actress for Lois Lane in this episode deserves at least a nomination for an Emmy, because the monologue that she gives, I mean, there's several, honestly, that she gives in this episode, but each one of them was so powerful and just had a lot of weight to it. And, you know, the entire time, you know, she's talking, she doesn't feel like a fictionalized mother in a world of superheroes. She feels like a real mother dealing with, you know, real mother kind of issues. And just the way she tackles it, you know, the realism that she brings to, you know, an otherwise, you know, fictionalized, you know, universe is just absolutely mind-blowing to me. She does such a great job, and I really can't wait to see what the future of this actress's career is after Superman and Lois. Not saying I want Superman and Lois to end anytime soon so the actress can move on. Definitely not. I'm hoping the show goes on for at least 5 seasons. But that said, you know, once the show does end, you know, probably 5 to 10 years from now, I would be very interested in seeing, you know, where these actors go from now, because everyone does such an amazing job, but I feel like Lois Lane's actress in particular, especially in this episode, has really shown that she's got a lot of talent. And I honestly kind of want to start looking through her IMDb and seeing other projects that she's been in, so I can see, other things that she may have given an amazing performance in. But you know what, guys, I'm kind of jumping the gun here by already talking about this. So let me just start by breaking this episode down scene by scene, and we'll get into that. So first of all, I'm gonna get kind of all the therapy sessions out of the way, because this is something that gets kind of sprinkled in throughout the entire episode at the beginning of each scene that takes place after the commercial breaks. And I think these are some amazing moments where, you know, we rarely see Lois Lane showing her vulnerability, because she always comes off as really tough on the outside, you know, and because of this, a lot of times we do forget that she is, you know, human just like the rest of us. You know, she may be married to, you know, a superhero, but she herself is not one. And I've always loved, you know, with Lois Lane is that she's really good at not showing her vulnerability to her enemies. But that being said, you know, when she's not around enemies, when she's around people who she can be vulnerable around, you know, just the way she's really able to, the way this episode is really able to delve into her psyche with certain subject matters, I think is absolutely brilliant. And the thing that happens in this episode, you know, I'll talk about it now, but we'll talk a little bit more about it when we get to the scene, is, you know, she tells this therapist that she almost lost her son, and, you know, in doing so, in almost losing him, she lost her temper at him. You know, she basically said a bunch of things to him that, you know, she didn't mean. And she couldn't help it. It was just one of those things where she just had a very strong reaction. And this makes her uncomfortable because she normally, you know, because she's a journalist and she knows that her words have a lot of power, and normally whenever, you know, she goes off on someone, it's always well deserved to that person. You know, looking at episode 2, I think it was episode 2 of this series, the way, you know, she deals with Morgan Edge, it's because, you know, she knows that Morgan Edge is a terrible person, and she has no issue at all letting him know how she feels about him. So you know, she even says in this episode, I don't usually have regrets. I reflect a lot, I contemplate, my decisions, but I rarely regret them. And saying that this time of her, totally losing it with Jonathan Kent was one of those rare moments where she actually did completely regret, the choice of words that she used when she was talking to him. And when we get to that scene, it'll make a lot more sense why. But and it's so cool that we have this whole like therapy session with her, and a lot about her character gets revealed, stuff that you could kind of tell probably wasn't originally part of the showrunners' plans when they did like the first episode, kind of like with the John Henry Irons thing. And changes to the show can happen, and it can still feel absolutely natural, and it can still feel like something that was planned from the very start. And I feel like this is one of those things. One of the things that gets revealed about her is that she at one point had a miscarriage. Her and her husband were about to have a third child when I believe John and Jordan Kent were both like 18 months old, but unfortunately, it just, life happens and she wasn't able to have the baby. So, it was just one of those things that we find out that she has always had this big like feeling of guilt where, even though it wasn't her fault, because it's just a genetic thing, she's always felt like, maybe if I did some, things different, maybe if I wasn't working, maybe if I wasn't lifting heavy objects, but in, this particular case, the way it was like kind of described of when it happened, it was one of those circumstances where it was just a genetic thing that no one could have any control over. So it was a really kind of deep moment in the show that I really was not expecting, but I thought, especially with, again, the performance that was given with her, I feel like they tackled it extremely maturely, and I thought it was just so well written in this episode. So next scene, now that I've finished going on my big rant on how amazing Lois Lane's actress is, now we got to talk about Jonathan for this episode, because he's kind of dealing with feeling very useless here, because we have like the scene where they're all kind of going over the events of the previous episode, and meanwhile they're trying to fix up the truck, because obviously there's the giant dent in it that was caused after they had to run over John Henry Irons in order to save Superman. But the entire time, Jonathan is just trying to help out with building repairing the truck. He's finding himself just kind of being useless there. And as Jordan Kent and Clark Kent are kind of the ones doing all the work on it. And I feel like Lois kind of notices this, and this is why she allows Jonathan Kent to kind of, help her out with exploring the RV that the stranger had, and in order to find answers that they still need on who this guy is exactly and where he came from. So the two of them do explore the RV, and this is when they discover his life on the parallel Earth, and this is where they discover like that he was not only really close with Lois's dad, but he was actually married to Lois Lane and had a child with her. And this is when our main characters, Jonathan and Lois Lane, actually for the first time see his little girl. And I do like the way Jonathan kind of looks at this. They both Jonathan kind of sees it as the sister he never had, and Lois Lane is just kind of reminded of the child that she never got to give birth to, something that at the time Jonathan Kent has no idea about. But of course, it has it definitely hits her in a heavy way, but of course, her being Lois Lane, she really just doesn't want to admit that, which I thought was absolutely well directed. We then have the other side, the kind of B plot of the episode going on with of course Lana Lang and Kyle Kushner and their daughter Sarah Cushing as well, Cushing, not Kushner, my bad. But anyways, what's going on is there's a school play, and they're trying to convince Sarah to try out for it, especially because she's no longer doing cheerleading. And when you're in high school, it's always really good to have some sort of extracurricular activity. At least it was for me. I don't know, every kid's different, but you can just tell that while they definitely don't want to push her to do it, they also do kind of want to encourage her. And I think kind of the way it happens here with, Kyle especially being excited to find out about her possibly being interested, I think it's kind of really well done. And I like the fact that he really wants to help her out, like with practicing, the morning before. I think the one kind of, I'll get a little more into this, but the one kind of downside with this episode is that kind of the scheduling makes absolutely no sense, but I'll get a little more into that when I talk about the rest of the episode. But regardless, I did think that this was kind of a, it takes a turn for the worse, unfortunately, at the end of it, but I did think that this was kind of a sweet moment with Kyle, trying to bond with Sarah. And when we cut to the school, this is where I'm kind of talking about the scheduling making no sense, because it starts out in the morning, so we're assuming this is all before school, but then we cut to school, but then we later on we'll cut back to them not being in school, but then we cut back to the auditions, even though they say the auditions were right after school. So I say that's kind of my nitpick for the episode, but again, that's me like nitpicking. I don't think it was like actually like structurally bad at writing. I just thought it was kind of weird, and it might have also been on the editing. It may not have actually been the fault of the writers, but regardless, we do have Jordan Kent trying to encourage Sarah as well, despite knowing that she has stage fright, but him saying that if she tries out for it, he'll definitely be there as a friend cheering her on. And this is actually something I really like with their current relationship. In a lot of movies and TV shows, when you have two characters who you could tell are meant to be together, a lot of times you kind of get frustrated with how long the writers will like let it drag on for before either one of them like asks the other out, or before like they finally do become a couple. One big example I always think of is Futurama. I always thought it was weird that it took so long for Fry and Leela to finally become like a thing, and even then it felt like they only became a thing because the writers of the show thought the show was over, and we only got to see them develop as a couple because Comedy Central renewed the show. So a lot of times I don't like it when couples wait till like the very last episode to get together, but in this particular case I'm okay with it, just because I think that Jordan and Sarah have an amazing relationship as friends, and it really kind of comes off as like with the two of them, just with Sarah in particular, just not sure if she's ready for another relationship. And I love that Jordan Kent's totally cool with that, and I love their relationship as friends. I think they honestly work really good as friends together here, and if they ever do become a couple later on, I think that'll work out as well. But I'm also kind of hesitant to see it because honestly, when they become a couple, it's probably going to lead to the usual relationship dramas that you get in any kind of CW show or just anything revolving around high school, because let's face it, there are very rare high school relationships that go well. So it's kind of like one of those things where I'm really hoping they milk the friendship aspect of their relationship a lot longer than a lot of other shows would do. Just because in this particular case, I'm more of a fan of these guys being friends than being together. Now, I'm not saying I don't want to see them together ever. I'm just saying if the showrunners want to take their time with it, I'm totally cool with that. We then get the first interrogation scene with John Henry Irons, and I'm just gonna call him John for the rest of the review, which I know can get confusing because there's now two Johns in the show, because you got John Kent and John Henry Irons, but I'm pretty sure with the images you'll be able to tell who I'm talking about in each individual scene. But here we get our first interrogation scene, and what I really like here is Superman trying really hard to show that he's very serious right now. Like, he's definitely trying to get answers, but he's also not trying to come off as threatening, because he knows exactly what John thinks of him. He knows that John thinks of him as a monster, so this entire time he's trying to earn his trust, trying to assure to John that he is on the same side. He is not like the Superman from his world. And what's also really interesting is that John actually gets him to question whether or not he's like the Superman from the world, because there's a scene that involves Superman looking at some articles that were from his world, and we see some very familiar moments. Specifically, one of them having to do with the bridge in, I believe it was China that almost collapsed, but Superman was there just in time in order to, you know, prevent there from being any damage. And we see that exact same thing happen in an article that, you know, comes from Jon's Earth. So it kind of leads to Superman being worried about, like, you know, what exactly happened to this version of Superman. Now, there is one key difference, and that is the costume. We do find out that the black suit Superman costume that we see in Jon's Earth, that was actually the costume that Superman had worn from the very beginning. So again, it probably comes down to just, you know, maybe that version of Superman landed somewhere completely different from Smallville, and that's what led to just a whole you know, different version of Superman, one that ended up turning against humanity instead of standing and fighting alongside of it. We also get a really cool flashback of John Henry Irons, and we find a little bit of a connection with Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it might also explain why it is that he was able to survive the merging of the multiverses. And it comes down to, like, Superman trying to put a stop to Jon's resistance and everything, and trying to break down his ship, which is something that Jon was hoping he would do, because we get Jon trying to ram the ship into what seems to be a wave of antimatter. Now, we don't actually see where it is he's ramming the ship into, but I think we can assume that it was antimatter, because the energy that we see from, you know, the reflection of the glass looked very red. And I mean, technically it could have come from two things. Maybe it came from Superman's heat vision, but it's very doubtful because Superman's on the side here and we see it coming from in front of Jon's face. And the other kind of possibility, although this is very unlikely because Superman wouldn't really have any powers if this was the case, is that maybe he's ramming the ship into a red sun, but I highly doubt that, because again, if that were the case, Superman would have absolutely lost all of his powers at this exact moment. So I don't think that's the case either. So I'm pretty sure it's safe to say he probably ran his ship into a wave of antimatter, which also could indicate the idea that, you know, if Jon was able to survive going through this wave of antimatter, it's very possible that this version of Superman could survive as well. Now, I know in Batwoman they kind of explain that doppelgangers tend to die if they stay in the same dimension for too long, you know, with another version of themselves. Like, you can't have two versions of the same people in the same, like, universe at the same time. But that being said, that was with a human character. So if maybe the explanation they went with was that because, you know, this evil Superman is Kryptonian, maybe the effects don't you know, harm him as much as it does with a normal human. I could totally see that explanation working, but I guess that's something we're gonna have to wait and see on. You know, if we get like evil Superman later on in the show, I would totally be down for it. Meanwhile, though, we get Jonathan Kent kind of looking around in the RV, and we see him witnessing the last video that was recorded of his mom, which, of course, if you remember from the previous episode, it was Superman absolutely annihilating her, you know, on live television. And you gotta imagine that has to be, like, traumatizing to see, seeing a version of an evil version of your dad killing your mother. Like, you gotta imagine that would not sit well with him. But unfortunately, while he's snooping around, he ends up setting off an alarm that ends up terminating any kind of intruder if they don't if they're not like one of the recognized you know, people who can use the voice acting or the voice access codes. I don't know why that was hard for me to say, sorry. Basically, yeah, Jon's AI system, you know, has a very select amount of people that it'll like accept being in the RV, but unfortunately Jon Kent was not one of them, so therefore he's about to be terminated. But luckily Superman gets there just in time to save him, and it's here where we get the scene that, you know, was kind of being built up the entire time during all the therapy sessions that we've had with Lois, you know, saying that, you know, she lashed out at someone who didn't quite deserve it. And we see it was, you know, Jon Kent, you know, for going into the RV without her, for, you know, snooping around, even though, you know, she was saying that they were doing this together. And especially because, like, with the RV having like a code recognition that only worked for Lois in this particular case, it was really dumb of Jon to go in by himself, but I also kind of get why he did it. But that said, that doesn't really justify the means, because his whole thing is that he feels absolutely powerless, and he was hoping that there would be something in the RV that he could use to like kind of arm himself for any other dangers that may come their way, so he's not just a vulnerable human like his mother. So he'd be able to fight just like his dad, or just like Jordan Kent. And I am really curious if this is something that we're going to get like explored more. Like maybe if Jonathan Kent never does get his powers within season 1 or season 2, like maybe he ends up kind of learning martial arts and just becomes like a kind of vigilante type character. And I can see that definitely working. Now, the question would really just be more of, would Superman and Lois let their kid, fight crime without superpowers? And probably not. But at the same time, I don't think Jon would really care whether or not he would have his parents' permission at that point. But that's something that I don't see happening anytime soon. I'm just like kind of thinking, the future of Superman and Lois, like 2 or 3 years down the line when we're at seasons like 2 or 3 or something like that. And that's assuming that Jon never does get his powers, which he still might. We still don't know for sure. A lot of people are assuming because, in the comic books, Jonathan Kent does have Superman's powers, that it'll eventually happen in the show. But the thing is, the Jonathan Kent that we have in the comic books and the Jonathan Kent we have in this show are two very different. In fact, I'd actually say that Jonathan Kent in the comic books way more resembles Jordan Kent than he does the Jonathan Kent in the TV show. So I don't see that happening anytime soon personally, but we'll have to wait and see for how that plays out. Now, here is where things take a bad turn for Kyle specifically, is that he comes across Morgan Edge's assistant, and she expresses disappointment that he turned down a job offer that Morgan Edge had offered him. And this goes back to the previous episode where Morgan Edge had, asked Lana Lang if Kyle might be interested in a leadership, like a leader position. And Lana said that, he's too busy being a fighter, and that's kind of his main job. Obviously, Lana did that to protect him, but of course, Morgan Edge, I feel like Morgan Edge probably kind of knew that something was going on, that Lana didn't want Kyle to be part of it. And so I feel like this was kind of a calculated decision by him to have his assistant let him know that he's disappointed that he didn't take up the job, hoping that it might lead to him, seeking out Morgan Edge himself. But what ends up happening is he ends up really, expressing disappointment with Lana in the middle of work, even while she's like kind of in the middle of talking to another client. And Lana tries to claim that Morgan Edge was the one that made the final decision, and because he respected Kyle, he didn't bother telling his assistant about that. But of course, I feel like Kyle definitely doubts her, and even if he doesn't, I feel like one of two things could happen. Is like he's either upset with his wife for not choosing him, or he's upset with Morgan Edge for not choosing him. But eventually, I feel like he's going to look into this and find out that it really is kind of all because of Lois Lane telling Lana to look out for anything suspicious from Morgan Edge. And Lana of course didn't want Kyle as a leader because she wanted to protect him. She didn't want to put him in any danger, and he doesn't believe there's any danger with Morgan Edge. So I feel like once he finds out that Lana did this in order to help Lois Lane, I feel like he is going to majorly blame Lois Lane for this. But that's something we'll have to wait and see. I feel like I've been saying that a lot during this review. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But with 15 episodes, yeah, what can you say? There's a lot that, of course, they don't want to fully explore. So I guess that's just the easiest thing to say whenever something is left with a mystery kind of a cliffhanger, I guess. So we get a really interesting moment here where we get General Lane, who is now the one interrogating Jon. And what's really funny about this is that before he goes in to interrogate Jon, basically he tells Superman that if he can't get any information from him, he's going to have his assistant Trask torture it out of him. And Superman's just kind of like, what? We don't torture. And then, of course, General Lane is just kind of like, well, we're the Department of Defense. I get the final say and everything. You don't get any opinions pretty much here. We do it our way, and that's that. So he goes in to interrogate him, and here we have Jon, who's looking at this man like he's his father-in-law, because he is on another Earth. This guy is his father-in-law. And he tells him straight up that, oh yeah, I know you. You're all bark and no bite. You claim you're going to torture me, but I've seen you intimidate other people. You never actually go through with it, which kind of indicates that, Jon and Sam Lane in this in his universe definitely have way more of a stronger bond than Superman and General Lane do. And I think it all comes down to just, a couple of things. One of the major things is the fact that Jon actually served in his universe. So it's very possible that they just had that military connection with each other. But the other thing kind of just comes down to the fact that you can just tell that Sam Lane always has this fear of Superman, and he doesn't, even though he trusts Superman, it's just the fact of whether or not Superman ever does turn to the dark side. It's the fact that he could, and if he did, he would be powerless. And I guess that's a lot of where like Lois kind of gets that thing of always wanting to be in control of the situation. You can tell she kind of gets that from her dad here, who also likes to constantly be in control of the situation. And when you have a person like Superman, existing, just existing, I don't even mean like, doing anything, like just existing in general, that's just an aspect of the world that you probably will never be able to control. And especially because, with this being in the Arrowverse, also knowing that Superman isn't the only thing out there that you can't control, it kind of makes sense that he has this distrust for Clark Kent. So I thought that was like kind of interesting here, the implication that he had a much stronger relationship with with John than he does with Clark. I thought that was kind of interesting. So later, much like what this was actually kind of funny to me, much like what John said, he essentially kind of sends John back to his cell. However, Trask, you can kind of tell he's just looking for the excuse. You can tell he was just getting so excited and ready to finally use his torture devices, so he's about to use them on John. But then it turns out the guy transferring him back to his cell is someone that has been infused with the X-Kryptonite, so he kills Trask and then basically takes John to the area where they have the contingency plan for Superman. Now we cut back to the school and we see that Jonathan, not to be confused with John, Jonathan needs someone to talk to, so he's trying to talk to Jordan, but Jordan is of course a little more focused on Sarah. However, he's not like completely blowing Jonathan off at all. Like, he's definitely trying to be a good brother to him, but it's just, he also kind of made prior engagements to Sarah Cushing, so that's why he's kind of there for her, audition first, and then you could tell he's definitely going to be there for Jonathan afterwards, and I like that. It's not like he's blowing him off, he's just kind of, sorting priorities, if that makes sense. And Jonathan has like kind of this point that he brings up, is that you're like the only person I can really talk to about anything, and I do think it's like really interesting that they both kind of have that in common. It's the whole thing with Jordan Kent, how there were times where he's wanted to tell Sarah everything going on, but he can't, and that's a big thing that really upsets him. So it's like one of those things where I think that's what really helps with both of them together, is the fact that they have each other that they can talk to, and they can they can kind of relate information for each other. Even though they're not quite both going through the same thing, they both know how to talk each other through what they're going through. Jordan knows how to talk Jonathan Kent through, not being the only one without powers, and Jonathan knows how to talk Jordan through, having these powers and not knowing fully how to control them yet. I do absolutely love their relationship in the show, and I was actually kind of worried because I thought in episode 6 that relationship was going to be kind of gone for a little bit, because you could tell that Jonathan had a very clear anger for Jordan. I wasn't sure how long that was going to last, and it might still be there, understandably, but I like how it's not taking away from the relationship, and then how he still trusts Jordan enough to be like vulnerable in front of him, and I absolutely love that. So unfortunately, Kyle, because after hearing the news he gets completely upset and doesn't even bother showing up for the audition. Sarah is afraid of going up by herself and singing alone, so Jordan offers to play piano instead of guitar for her, so she can still play the song. Now I remember hearing a review, I don't remember who it was from, but someone kind of pointed out like how in this scene it was weird because they showed that the song was meant to be played on guitar and not piano, but as someone who's played piano, it's a very universal like instrument, so it's honestly, it can be used kind of as a replacement for almost anything. So if someone was originally going to play something on guitar, you could easily play it on piano as well. Not for every song, obviously, there are definitely exceptions, but I do feel like piano is just such a great instrument when it comes to just, you know, its flexibility of what you can use it for, if that makes sense. So he goes and, you know, he's a little bit sour with the notes at first, but he gets it down very soon afterwards. And we see that Sarah actually does have a really nice voice. And I almost feel like that's kind of a requirement now with a lot of the actors they get on the CW is, hey, can you sing well? Because there is a chance we might do a musical episode. It's a CW show, so it's very likely to happen at this point. I really hope Superman and Lois doesn't have a full-on musical episode, at least not anytime soon. It just, the musical episode idea doesn't seem right with this, but the way they utilize her voice in this episode works totally well because it's just a musical number, and it's not even like, you know, kind of characters breaking into song, you know, non-diegetically. This is just her singing in front of an audience, and again, I thought her voice was like absolutely beautiful the entire time, and you kind of get this hint that Jonathan Kent also might be kind of falling for her a little bit, so it could possibly lead to some drama. Like most of the time, if it was like any other show, I would say I really hope it doesn't, but given the writing that we've gotten so far on this show, I think that if any show can handle two brothers having feelings for the same girl and still handle it really well, I feel like it's Superman and Lois. But again, that's something we'll have to wait and see how that plays out later on. So we get a scene with Superman and General Sam Lane as they're kind of discussing what their next move should be. I absolutely love right here what we get is something that's a little bit of a reversal of what we're used to, because, you know, a lot of the times General Sam Lane kind of, you know, even knowing how strong and tough her daughter is, he also knows that that could sometimes be for, you know, that could be actually bad in a sense. And a lot of times, you know, even though he knows how strong she is, he still sees her as his daughter, and, you know, is afraid to put her into some dangerous situations. Whereas Superman, I feel like Superman has always had this huge trust with Lois the entire series that we've seen, in the sense of whenever Lois is getting into a dangerous situation, Superman will express concerns, but he won't try to like convince her not to do it, and he won't ever try to stop her. And here we have kind of a parallel, like almost the exact opposite thing happening, because now we have Superman who's just uncomfortable with the idea of Lois Lane talking to this guy, whereas General Sam Lane is actually the one who's trying to say that Lois might be their best shot of getting through to him. Now, there are a couple of reasons why Superman isn't quite comfortable with the idea. I think one of them being the fact that he knows that Lois is kind of at a vulnerable place right now, and part of it might be afraid of John taking advantage of that, and just overall in general, like just you know, the whole situation being as weird as it is, with there being like a parallel version where the two of them were married, there might be that little bit of kind of worry, I guess, with him in that sense. But at the same time, it's not like Superman is fully against it. He's just, you know, a little more against it than he normally would have been, if that makes sense. But eventually they find out that one of the guards has actually taken John, so Superman goes after him. But unfortunately, it's in the room where they keep, of course, all the contingency weapons for Superman if he were to ever turn rogue. And what we get here then is a fight with Superman only having like partial use of his powers, fighting a Kryptonian with a mask, so he's able to inhale as he's like using a kryptonite gas on Superman, and basically because of this he has a bit more of an advantage, but Superman is later able to even the playing field by, you know, taking off his mask and ingesting him with kryptonite gas as well. Now, one thing that may upset a few people is the fact that Superman actually loses this fight, you know, when they're on even ground. We see that Superman in this universe hasn't quite learned martial arts as much as he probably should, because he gets his ass kind of kicked when they're both on an even playing field. So I can see some people being upset about that, but I also hope this means that later on we might get a cool training montage of Superman actually trying to learn how to fight, you know, without using his powers as well, in case he's in another situation like that. Like maybe, I'm sure at the Fortress of Solitude they have to have like a red sun room, a room that produces like red sun energy that he can use to like train. I think that would be kind of cool if we got something like that in season 2, where maybe you get John Henry Irons training Clark, you know, as a human in order to prepare him for another situation similar to this. I think that would be something really cool. But in the middle of the battle, Superman is kind of saved by Jon. But of course, Jon is immediately ready to kill him immediately afterwards, because, you know, it was one of those things where he saved him, but he saved him only so he could kill him himself while he was still weak. But the military comes in, and Lois is the one that convinces him not to kill Clark Kent. And, okay, I gotta go on a little bit of a rant here that's slightly not related to Superman completely, but related to The Flash, because the last few villains that we've been getting on The Flash, we've had constantly our main heroes talking down the villains and getting them to lay down their arms and, you know, change their life of crime and become good. And every time it happens, it's been so bad because it's always kind of come out of nowhere, and there's never been any build up or any hints that these villains have like redemption in them. And it's been absolutely garbage. You know, this last season of The Flash has just not been what, you know, I think The Flash is usually like, you know, when the writing can be great. Because when it came to The Flash season 6, I thought a lot of season 6 was absolutely brilliant. You know, I felt like The Flash was finally back on top. But then when it came to this recent season, you know, we've had 3 villains this season alone where The Flash doesn't stop them. He just like tells them to stop being mean, and then they stop being evil and all that. But for this show, the way they handled Jons Redemption here is absolutely fantastic, because like I've been saying, he's not a villain, you know, and at this point he's not even really an antagonist anymore. He started out as an antagonist because he legit thought that Superman was going to turn just like he did on his world, because you know, after seeing his whole perspective on, you know, this universe, it's so much like his own universe, so it makes total sense that he would have this suspicion of Superman. So him kind of going out of his way to try to kill Superman before he turns on the world honestly makes a lot of sense. And I have so much appreciation for this character at this point. So when Lois Lane comes in and talks him down and convinces him not to kill Superman, and then he doesn't kill Superman, it works. It makes so much sense for his character, and it's so well written because we had 8 episodes telling us that this guy is not evil. So when you have, you know, someone that looks exactly like your wife telling you not to kill the man that killed a parallel version of her, it makes sense that this would be what would get him to finally listen and finally, like, you know, give up on his quest to kill Superman and instead put all of his energy on, you know, focus his energy on trying to stop Morgan Edge, you know. Again, absolutely brilliant scene, I thought. And I think what also helped was the build up to it in this episode alone with Lois Lane, you know, learning about his history, you know, learning that they had a daughter together on his world, and kind of, you know, using that with what she also knows what it's like to lose someone because you had no control over it. I think it was absolutely brilliant the way it all kind of came together here. Now, we get a scene where I feel like a scene that we've needed for a while, where General Sam Lane is finally up front with Superman, and I absolutely love this because I kind of see both sides here, you know. I see that it definitely shows that Sam Lane doesn't trust Superman as much as Superman wishes he would, but at the same time, it's not like Sam Lane thinks that Superman's going to go rogue or anything like that, but Sam Lane honestly wants to prepare for the worst just in case, you know, and it's just because that's how he was born. He was born to, you know, prepare for every possible, like, you know, negative outcome that there could possibly be. So I don't blame him, honestly, for having the weapons or having like the kryptonite within the Department of Defense. The one thing, you know, I think he should have done from the beginning is he should have told Superman about it. He shouldn't have tried to hide the fact that they had contingency weapons for Superman. That was kind of just the main thing I had against it. So now that we have him being upfront with Superman about it, I like it because I think it does kind of help build like the idea that they could end up trusting each other a lot more down the line. And I also like how General Sam Lane even kind of says, I know that you don't trust me right now and it's going to take a lot for me to rebuild that trust. But you know, I love it that he kind of feels bad that he didn't tell him, but he doesn't feel bad for what he's doing. He definitely stands by what he's doing is the right thing to do. And I gotta be totally honest, I kind of agree with him here, and this is a subject that gets tackled in Supergirl all the time, like the idea that, Supergirl gets so mad whenever she finds out that, God, what was Lex Luthor's sister's name? I keep forgetting her name, but she expresses disappointment that, she has kryptonite, and, the way that, Lex's sister sees it is that, literally we as humans have millions of things that can kill us. This is the one thing that can kill you, and is it really that wrong that we as humans want to have like that one thing just as a defense mechanism in case of the worst? Personally, I'm kind of with Sam Lane here. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with the Department of Defense having kryptonite, especially because Superman isn't the only Kryptonian that the Earth has seen. Supergirl season 1, the main threat was a bunch of Kryptonians. So, I'm kind of, again, it's all about, like, I get why he's preparing for the worst. I just think he should have been upfront with Superman about it from the beginning, and then I feel like there could have been more trust between the two of them. So I really like this moment where he's finally very upfront, and I even loved Superman just kind of being like, can you just stop lying to my face? And I really hope that this comes to a mutual trust later on. Excuse me, wow, I just had a weird hiccup there. But I hope this comes to a mutual trust later on where they can just agree to disagree, if that makes sense. So we then have the next morning, and we have Kyle trying to apologize to Sarah and, promising that he'd make it up to her. And I kind of like what Sarah just kind of says here. He's like, just do what you want to do. Just stop making promises, because you're just going to keep getting my hopes up, and it's not fair to me. And, and I think that's very fair, because, yeah, the fact is that, while Kyle was upset, he could have, he definitely wanted his moment to himself to drink and, just be upset by himself. But at the same time, if he was like more responsible about it, he could have at least gone to the audition first and then kind of sulked on his own immediately afterwards. But no, instead he decided to sulk and then kind of let his daughter down in the process because he was too drunk to show up to her audition. However, definitely not trying to say, this justifies what he does at all. I'm definitely not trying to say that. But at the very least, I feel like a lot of other CW shows would have had him shown up drunk to the audition and therefore completely humiliated her in front of the entire school. I'm glad they didn't do anything like that. I'm glad that, it was one of those things where they implied that he was too drunk to go, and he knew he was too drunk to go, so he did the smart thing and just didn't go. So I do definitely appreciate that part. That was kind of implied. At the same time, I'm definitely not justifying what he did or anything. I'm not trying to say what he did was right. I'm just saying it could have been a lot worse, if that makes sense. We then have this absolutely amazing moment with Lois Lane apologizing to Jonathan Kent, and I think both actors do an amazing job. It's definitely They definitely felt like a real mother and son in that situation, because, I think like a lot of people have had moments where, their parents will be vulnerable to them, and they'll have those moments of, every once in a while, you're the one who has to help, comfort your parent when they're completely down. And the way it's done in this scene, I thought was just absolutely amazing. And again, like, the actress who plays Lois, whose name I need to learn because I'm terrible at learning names, so I apologize, but her performance in this episode is just so amazing, and I really hope she gets nominated for an Emmy for this episode, because she's been great the entire series, but this episode in particular, oh my god, she has just given the best performance I've ever seen from her from the series, and that's saying a lot for sure. So we have her kind of breaking down with Jonathan Kent, and Jonathan Kent, forgiving her, and also, trying to help, cheer her up and everything. We then have one last scene between Jon and Superman, and here, they're kind of at a mutual spot right now, where Jon is clearly no longer interested in trying to kill Superman. However, he's not really interested in working with him either. I feel like they both kind of want to take down Morgan Edge, but in their own separate way. And I kind of get Jon in this sense, because even though he knows this version of Superman isn't the same from his world, he still has the same face of the man that killed his wife, and that's kind of like how he's looking at it right now. So he has no interest in working with Superman currently, and you can't blame him at all all for that. And I absolutely love this final moment between the two of them where they have a bit of an understanding with each other. I do think that eventually they will work together and he'll learn to kind of, forgive his face, if that makes any sense. And I do think it'll happen eventually. I think that eventually, we'll see him suited up as the actual Steel fighting side by side with Superman. And I think the moment where he actually does, fully trust Superman, it'll be the moment when Superman tells Jon his secret identity as Clark Kent, and he finds out that Superman is married to Lois Lane. I think that'll be the moment when Jon realizes that he can trust Clark Kent. Lastly, we get a final scene between Jon and Lois Lane, and again, I really love the way they kind of wrap things up here. In the beginning, he was kind of sad to find out that Lois didn't marry him in this reality, that she chose someone else, but at the very end, he finally has like this acceptance, accepting that, even though she looks exactly like his wife, she isn't. It's the same face, but it's not exactly the same person. And they have that kind of mutual understanding with Lois like hoping, like wishing the best for him, and him just kind of saying that he, like, the two of them are good, basically, if that makes sense. And that's basically where we end the episode there. And again, guys, I thought this was an absolutely fantastic episode. There was so much going on, which is why this review is probably gone on for a very, very long time. But at the same time, it's probably one of the better episodes this season. I don't quite want to say it's my favorite. I think episode 6 is still up there as my favorite, but this was definitely a really amazing episode regardless. So I definitely recommend giving a watch. But of course, at the end of the day, these are just my A+ opinions. We here at A+ Opinions always want to know what you guys think. So definitely let me know if you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. But guys, of course, above all, keep it A+.